European Union leaders plan to grant candidate status to Ukraine after intense lobbying by Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The formal move will come at the bloc summit in Brussels starting on Thursday. The bold geopolitical move was triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But Ukraine and Moldova might take years or even a decade to qualify for membership. Zelenskyy says that the summit decision will be a symbolic step to show the EU's intention to reach deep into the former Soviet Union.
While Ukraine and neighboring Moldova are expected to be welcomed into the EU's waiting room on Thursday, Georgia will be given a European perspective, but told it must fulfill conditions before winning candidate status. Behind the triumphant rhetoric, however, there is a concern within the EU about how the bloc can remain coherent and united as it continues to enlarge. Reticence over enlargement has slowed progress towards membership for a group of Balkans countries: Albania, Bosnia, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia and Serbia, whose leaders will meet their EU counterparts in Brussels on Thursday. According to a survey by the EU's Parliament, nearly two-thirds of Europeans consider membership of the EU a good thing, the highest result in 15 years. Still, leaders know that public discontent is mounting over a spike in inflation and energy crisis as Russia tightens gas supplies in response to worsening sanctions, and these economic concerns will be hotly debated on the second day of the summit.
Dr. Alexander Titov is a lecturer in modern European history at Queen's University in Belfast. He joins us now via Zoom. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the programme.
Hello.
Dr. Titov, how symbolic is this candidate status for Ukraine and Moldova?
Well, it is a very big symbolic step in the sense that the current crisis in Ukraine began in 2014 over the plans for association agreement with with European Union, between Ukraine and European Union, to which Russia objected, and that led to internal crisis in Ukraine, the revolution and overthrow of the Yanukovych government, and then Russian annexation of Crimea, war in Donbass, and now that war in Donbass being reignited with Russian invasion in February 2021. So basically, the relations with European Union been always at the origins of all this war with Russia, which has been going on arguably for more than 8 years. So now there is kind of another kind of symbolic step that the Europe is accepting that Ukraine can start moving towards it.
How might Russia react to this candidate status?
Well, I think what they're trying to do, Russia now, is that they're trying to make facts on the ground. So it's already annexed Crimea. It's controlling about 20% of Ukrainian territory. There are active military activity in terms of seizing more territory. So what Ukraine will look like in terms of its territory, as well as obviously infrastructure and so forth, at the end of the war is a very big question. Whether it will ever be able to restore control over all its territory is questionable, and there is a real possibility that Russia will seize more territory and simply not give it back. So in a sense, I don't know how Ukraine can join when a lot of its territory is actually occupied by Russia, and Russia is not going to give it back that easily. And I don't think Ukraine actually has the capacity to take it by force. So that's how Russia is responding to it.
All right. So a moral, optical victory, perhaps, but I guess it does send a message to Moscow that times are changing, and this push from the west to the east of Europe is getting wider and wider.
Perhaps, I mean, you have to, as I said, it's a symbolic state, widely acknowledged that it's done purely because of these exceptional circumstances which are unfolding now since the February 2014, that Ukraine is not in itself in a right state to be even a candidate member, let alone a full member. So this is given, it's like an advanced prize, which been giving, very limited one, very symbolic one, but nevertheless an advanced prize. But the actual logistics of it are just mind-boggling, and I don't think clearly anybody is, thinking about it in the European Union, or rather they're thinking about it, but they're putting it aside for the better days, in the sense that what are they actually taking in? Are they taking the whole Ukraine? They're taking only Ukraine, which will be left after the end of the war, and if there is Russia still occupying territories, what will be a state of Ukraine, beyond the borders, how far its economy is functioning, society is functioning, in the conditions of war and so forth, or post-war conditions. And so forth. So I think that these things are not really been tackled at the moment. It's just a purely symbolic thing, saying like, well, we promised to Ukraine, we have to do it, otherwise it will be a great disappointment. But as a long-term strategy, I'm kind of very doubtful that all the consequences and logistics of it actually been thought through at this stage by European Union.
So I'm just wondering now, if the war ends tomorrow, do the equations change? Because we know Sweden, Denmark, they were not keen on Ukraine coming into the European Union, certainly not quickly, and we know it will take time. But this Ukraine war has even changed their own circumstances in terms of things like NATO. And so if the war ends tomorrow, how do the political dynamics shift and change?
Well, yes, and of course the issue is how the war will end. The issue of occupation of Russian territory, the peace deal, and so forth, are all imponderables at this stage. Okay, so if war is ended tomorrow and Ukraine, restored itself to pre-war borders, and Russia agreed to it, I think then it becomes really difficult in terms of, then it has to do a whole lot of reforms to bring itself to legal, judicial, political, social norms of European Union, which they will take time, and which European Union will assess whether it's ready or not. But I think the bigger problems, with the goodwill, it can be brushed aside as current conditions have been brushed aside, or kind of put into the longer perspective. But I think that the kind of fundamental issue is economic one. And economically, Ukraine is, Moldova and Ukraine are the two poorest countries in Europe by all statistics. Ukraine is quite a large country too, about 40 million people. Poor, large country, which has just been devastated by the war. Who is going to pay for it? Even if you seize all the Russian resources, you still need to have enormous amount of investment. And who is going to come with investment? Once you become a member, you have the other members have kind of responsibility to bring you to kind of minimum level. That will be extremely expensive, and I don't think there is either money or the will, certainly at the moment, to with all the economic crisis going on in terms of energy prices, in terms of inflation, in terms of greater need to spend on security and so forth, that there will be actually a particularly free money, hundreds of billions of dollars to spend on Ukraine permanently as a member state.
Right.
So I think the kind of economic issue is the big problem there.
So it could be, I guess, more than anything, a PR exercise. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen tweeted earlier, this decision strengthens us all. It strengthens Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia in the face of Russian imperialism, and it strengthens the EU. Is that fact or just bravado on the stage?
Well, sorry, I think the latter, I'm afraid. Yeah, I mean, you said it's largely symbolic, but at the same time, it's not. There is very kind of important problem for the EU there, that if they think it's just symbolic, we can give it, and then it will take decades for it actually to come about. It's one thing. Ukrainians actually think that it will be very sweet, that the European Union is serious, that Ukraine, I mean, by opinion polls, will be in the European Union within a few years. 5 years is this kind of the pessimistic estimation on Ukraine's part and so forth. And when that doesn't materialize, and then basically European Union is putting itself in a very kind of hard position. So they're promising something which, by the sound of it, they might not actually thinking of implementing anytime soon. This will create a lot of tensions with Ukraine and a lot of pressure for them to move forward. And then creates all these other pressures in terms of actual logistics, which are very, very difficult and probably in some places are impossible for European Union to implement. So they're creating themselves a huge amount of problems, I'm afraid, potentially going down the line if they're promising it, but not really serious about it.